Nikola Jokic has been the best player in the NBA in the 2020s, building his legacy as one of the best players of all time, as he continues to lead the Denver Nuggets. However, there are a few narratives floating around right now that are being used to knock Nikola Jokic out of the MVP race, and most of them, well, they don't hold up. And after witnessing another Jokic masterclass on Christmas Day, it's time we debunk 5 of those narratives. One of the most common arguments against Nikola Jokic winning another MVP is the idea that he's already won enough of them. And on the surface, that might sound reasonable, until you actually think about what the MVP award is supposed to represent. If voter fatigue is the argument, then, well, we are admitting that it's no longer about basketball. The MVP is supposed to be a single season award. It's not about career legacy, it's not about spreading trophies around, and it's definitely not about being bored of greatness. The NBA is not a charity. The awards should and must be based on merit to ensure the integrity of the sport and league are maintained. If Jokic is having one of the best seasons in the league again, then past MVP awards shouldn't suddenly raise the standard for him and no one else. Because you say he's already won enough, well then you're admitting it's no longer about basketball. What you're really saying is that Jokic now has to be clearly better than everyone else, not just the best. Meanwhile, other candidates only have to be great. It's about narrative, and if the narrative matters more than impact, then the MVP conversation is already broken. What makes this even more interesting is what happened last season. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was awarded with the MVP. He's no longer chasing his first one. He's no longer the new face trying to break through. So the question becomes, why is he still being framed as the underdog? Well, if the logic is consistency, value, and impact, then suddenly that logic seems to disappear when Jokic enters the conversation. Because the media knows something that fans feel, but don't always say out loud. They know who is the most valuable basketball player in the world. And the only way to argue against that right now isn't with basketball reasons, it's with storylines. Once we reach that point, we're no longer debating MVPs. We are debating comfort levels. Another argument you hear a lot in the MVP debate is that Nikola Jokic doesn't score enough to deserve the award. And once again, this is one of those takes that sounds reasonable until you look a little closer. He scores less because he doesn't have to. That's not a flaw. And there's also something about that we'll get onto in a little moment. But Jokic, he doesn't score obsessively, he scores efficiently. That's a big difference. He takes what the defense gives him. If the defense sends help, he passes. If they stay home, he scores. And if they make a mistake, he punishes it immediately. Scoring volume without efficiency is easy to appreciate because it shows up cleanly in box scores. But scoring less because you are making the correct decision every possession is much harder to notice and much harder to defend. Jokic could chase points if he wanted to. We've seen it. When Denver needs scoring, he can flip a switch and dominate. In fact, it's wrong to say he can't or doesn't score at a high level. This season alone, Jokic has scored over 50 points twice, once against the Clippers and once on Christmas Day against the T-Wolves, putting up 55 and 56 points. By comparison, Gilgeous-Alexander has had one 50-point game this season, on opening night in double overtime against the Pacers. So the idea that Jokic can't score or doesn't score enough simply doesn't hold up. The reason his scoring averages look different is because his teams score more when he plays this way. He's not hunting shots, he's hunting advantages. Not forcing shots isn't a weakness, it's discipline. And that discipline is exactly why his total offensive impact, scoring, playmaking, and efficiency combined, is unmatched in today's NBA. It is so unmatched to the point that efficiency-wise, Jokic is on track to be the first ever player in NBA history to have at least a 60% field goal percentage and a 40% three-pointer percentage. Another popular argument in this MVP discussion is that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander carries more on offense. And again, I understand why people feel that way. His usage is high, the ball is in his hands constantly, and a lot of Oklahoma City's scoring runs start with him. But usage and value are not the same thing. Jokic doesn't need the ball to dominate the game. He controls possessions through positioning, timing, and decision making, not through dribbling the air out of the ball. When Jokic touches the ball, the defense reacts immediately. You don't see 10 seconds of isolation, you see cutters moving, shooters relocating, and defenders panicking because one wrong step means an open layup layup or a wide open three. He's controlling the offense, albeit in a non-traditional way. Carrying an offense doesn't always need to mean creating a shot for yourself. Sometimes it means creating an advantage for everyone else on the floor, every single possession. And that's where Jokic separates himself. He creates high quality looks without needing to hold the ball for long stretches. He doesn't rack up usage by force, he racks up impact by making the game easier for everyone else around him. When people say SGA carries more, what they often mean is that his offense is more visible. Isolation scoring shows up clearly on highlights. Meanwhile, manipulating defenses with angles, timing, and passing vision doesn't always. Jokic doesn't carry the offense on his back. He carries it with his brain. And that kind of impact is easy to overlook if you're only watching the box score, the highlights, instead of the actual possessions. Another argument that comes up constantly in the MVP conversation is that Nikola Jokic's defense somehow disqualifies him from winning the award. And this usually starts with how he looks defensively. He's not a rim protecting shot blocker. He's not switching onto guards on the perimeter. So people assume that he's a liability. But defense isn't just about blocks and steals. It's about positioning. It's about anticipation. It's about communication. Jokic plays positional defense at an all-time level. He reads passing lanes, he directs traffic, and he's almost always in the right spot before the play fully develops. Recently, he's become the clear commander of Denver's zone defense, calling out coverages, organizing rotations, and making sure everyone knows where to be. This isn't mere speculation either. Last season, both Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert were in shock when Nikola Jokic knew an after timeout play on an inbound, seemingly better than they did on their own play.
I'm sorry, y'all. Hey, I was just telling Micah how this motherfucker knew the play that we was running.
That was crazy.
Bro.
We have a spy on the bench, man.
Who knew it?
Jokic knew the play, but we didn't say anything.
He's pretty smart.
He knew the play better than us.
Which play was it?
Coming out of the timeout, also he knew the play. I think he knew the play better than us.
Which play? Like what the last year.
Man, when was that? When was that? When was it?
It was in the fourth, nigga. It was like 3 minutes left in the fourth.
After the timeout?
Yes, bro. It was right after the timeout. Me and Rudy lined up. This motherfucker say, hey, he's good. Me and Rudy looked at each other and said, how the fuck do we know? Because nobody said what we
didn't say nothing.
But I don't, that nigga cheat, bro.
Yeah, we gotta launch an investigation. There's some, but yeah, no, that was. What was the question again?
That's pattern recognition at the very highest quality. His team defend better with him. And is Jokic a lockdown defender? No. And he doesn't need to be. He's not hurting his team defensively, and that matters far more than highlight blocks. MVPs don't need to be perfect on both ends of the floor. They need to provide overwhelming value. And night after night, Jokic does exactly that. The final argument against Nikola Jokic in the MVP race is that the Nuggets haven't looked dominant enough as a team. But this is where context matters and where team dominance becomes a lazy shortcut. Denver's season hasn't been perfectly smooth. They've dealt with injuries, shifting rotations, and long stretches without key starters. And yet, despite all of that, the conversation keeps coming back to how dominant the Nuggets look instead of how they actually perform. When Jokic is on the floor, Denver looks like a contender. When he sits, they don't. To be fair, this season has shown real improvement in non-Jokic minutes. With bench additions like Jonas Valanciunas, Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway, and others, Denver's bench has stabilized. Those non-Jokic minutes have improved from around -8 last season to about -1 this year. That's real progress, but improvement doesn't erase the gap. It highlights it. Because when Jokic is playing, the Nuggets don't just survive. They control games. They are the best ever offensive team ever. An offensive rating of 124 brings them to an all-time record. And the on-off impact matters more than overall record or flashy win streaks. Basketball isn't played by standings. It's played by possessions. And possession for possession, Jokic changes games as much as anyone in the league. This is where comparisons get uncomfortable. The reality is, Oklahoma City would still be a very good team without SGA. They're deep, well-coached, and loaded with young talent. Denver, without Jokic on the other hand, still struggles to resemble a true playoff team for long stretches. That difference matters. And guess what? Jokic is doing all he can while the Nuggets sit at a franchise record start of 22 wins and 8 losses, all while battling injuries. They've played extended stretches without key starters like Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, and more recently Cam Johnson. Despite that, Denver continues to win because their entire system is built around one constant, Nikola Jokic, alongside his running mate Jamal Murray. The Nuggets don't need 65 games for Jokic to be the most valuable player. They just need to be dramatically better when he's on the floor, and they are. And if they stay healthy, a 60-win season isn't unrealistic, and if it happens, well then, the MVP debate might finally have to focus on basketball instead of narratives. It is now universally accepted that Jokic is the best basketball player in the world. However, this does not mean he is automatically deemed to be the MVP of any given season. Nevertheless, Nikola Jokic goes out on the court every game and continues to prove this fact, adding to his legacy and proving that he should be the MVP once again.
I know that I told that I don't want to stay on parade, but I fucking want to stay on parade. This is the best.